Hey Clashers, we got a new equipment in the game, so there's a ton of questions. Like, is the new equipment any good? What are the best equipments currently in the game, and what equipment should you use and upgrade? So I thought I have an equipment ranking for every single hero, so you know what equipments to use, to upgrade, and to play. Let's dive in for every single hero, and let's start with the Roy Champ and the new Rocket Spear. And I have a top 3 suggestion for every single hero with equipment combinations which are working really well alongside each other. On the left side, it's always the better equipment. On the right side is then the synergy equipment, which is working really well with that first equipment together. But this is not about the priority of how you should upgrade them. This is what I'm going to tell you over the video. Let's start things off with the number 1 priority for the Royal Champion. This equipment nearly works always. It's just the all-rounder and perfect combination for the Royal Champion because we have the Haste Vial, which is the offensive powerhouse equipment of the Royal Champion, and we have the Hot Rider Puppet, which is giving you this safety, this protection on defense to make sure the Royal Champ is staying alive and can use and utilize this offensive power of the Haste Vial, with spawning Hot Riders and turning the Royal Champ invisible. With that, we have our number 1 equipment combination. But you want to upgrade the Hog Rider Puppet first because spawning more and stronger Hog Riders is more important than just a couple of stats on the Haste Vial. Really important. Let's move on to the second equipment combination now, which is going to include the Rocket Spear. I would kind of compare the Rocket Spear with the Spiky Ball or the Fireball of the Warden. It is going to be utilized in more creative approaches and in really specific use cases. And it's not going to be an all-rounder equipment as, for example, the Haste Vial and the Hot Rider Puppet. Or, for example, if you compare it to other epic equipment, it's not as an all-rounder as, for example, the Giant Gauntlet or the Frozen Arrow of the Archer Queen. It's more specific. For example, for this one, we're going to have the use case of like a solo Royal Champion diving into a base with a hero dive, for example, with like Lado after and such things. And this is where it can take down a huge part of the base, especially if you invest little things like an Earthquake spell and such. Really strong equipment, but it's not having that many use cases. But if you want to have the default best equipment combination, this is at the top. It's always from the left to the right when it comes down to best to worst equipments. Otherwise, if the Royal Champ is deployed behind a lot of troops and tanks, you want to have a really solid damage equipment with health recovery, which is then going to be the Haste Vial with the Royal Gem. Same thing goes for a Royal Champion Charge, which is using the Fox and invisibility spells. Now you might wonder, why don't you use the Rocket Spear for that? Well, the Rocket Spear kinda, well, with a long range, makes it that the Fox is running in front and you really struggle to keep the Fox alive and such. It's not going to work that great together. Just having the Royal Gem and the Haste Vial, in my opinion, is just giving you more value. So, if you're going for creative approaches, then you really want to make sure that you're diving in and using that Rocket Spear with the shield, which can deal a lot of damage together. Otherwise, the third combination is really strong as well, because it's again using the Haste Vial, which is just the non-plus ultra when it comes to the Royal Champion. But that's it for the Royal Champ. Let's move on to the Barbarian King and see how it looks like for him. And I feel like for the King, we're not going to have some changes in quite some time, as long as Supercell is not nerfing the synergy between the Rage Vial and the Giant Gauntlet. Just having the bonus damage on the splash of the Rage Vial is just crazy strong. And again, it can be utilized in pretty much every single strategy. If you want to go more into detail, more into creative attacks and really specific use cases for the Barbarian King, then you can combine the Gauntlet with the Spiky Ball, or something like the Spiky Ball with a Vem Stash. The difference between those two equipment combinations, the number 2 and the number 3, is if you send the King into the village, then go Spiky Ball with the Gauntlet. If you have the King walking around the outside more, then you have Vem Stash and the Spiky Ball. The reason for that is splash or non-splash. That's kind of like the big main difference here. But let's take a look at the use cases. It's pretty straightforward, to be honest. It's the all-rounder, it's the default, and that is going to be Gauntlet with the Rage Vial. Otherwise, for air spam, for air attacks, I really have to say though, it's super crazy strong to have the Spiky Ball with the Vem Stash, because you have the King going around the outside, you can get a ton of value. It's super straightforward, and you get a lot of times great value, great funneling for your air troops. So that's pretty much it for the Barbarian King. Straightforward, not much has changed, but let's take a look at the Archer Queen. Because I did some adjustments for the Archer Queen. The number 1 and number 2 priority is here the same in my opinion. If you have unlocked the Invisibility Vial, the Frozen Arrow, and the Healer Puppet, you have equipment combinations for every single strategy in the game. It's just really, really good. The reason why I have personally the invisibility with the Frozen Arrow on the number 1 is because with this equipment combination, you're pretty much covering 99.9% of the strategies with the Archer Queen, and you're always going to have solid value. The only reason why the Healer Puppet then with the invisibilities on the second spot is because this combination has one weakness, and that is it's not as strong on Queen charges. Otherwise, with air or ground or whatever, it's always going to be rock solid. But this last combination is just a game changer, especially in the current meta, with having a lot of invisibility towers. So if you combine the Giant Arrow with the Healer Puppet versus invisibility tower bases with like dragons and such things, it is just insanely strong. And I will do a video about it really soon as well to really highlight that, because it is crazy strong. And since I recorded that video already, I can tell you it's a lot of fun as well. But let's take a look at those overall strategies and what I make up with those. If you're wondering, A plus G spam, iTzu, did you like, I don't know, slip up on your, I don't know, keyboard or something? No, that's air plus ground spam, okay? So like mass yetis, mass root rise, such things, or any type of dragon attack. This is like the classic combination, invisibility and Healer Puppet. You will see that equipment combination used by most pros. And then the more creative approaches is then a lot of times as well with the Frozen Arrow and the Healer Puppet, or with the Giant Arrow and the Healer Puppet can work great as well. Otherwise, smash attacks, queen charges, super archer blimp, hero dives. For all of those, it's either invisibility and Frozen or invisibility and Healer Puppet. As I said, those three equipments are going to cover pretty much every single strategy for the Archer Queen in the game. It's just crazy how much you can cover. But if you want to go more creative, if you want to go just for fun, I can highly recommend now as well using the Giant Arrow for some of those strategies where it's, especially versus invisibility tower bases, where you can get quite some nice value. But with that, we're getting to the Warden. And that's always a little bit more complex, because the Warden has a lot of good equipment, and those equipment are changing the identity of the Warden. And on top of that, the Warden is the by far, in my opinion, strongest hero in the game, especially with all of those current equipments. Let's take a look at the number 1 priority. Number 1 priority is going to be the Eternal Tome and the Healing Book. This is pretty much going to cover the majority of strategies out there, and it's always going to get you some value. It's always going to be useful. It's always going to be strong. That is the more supportive style of playing the Warden. If you like to have the Warden being a one-man army, then you want to go for the second option, which is the Rage Vial and the Fireball. Let's take a look at some numbers for the Fireball and for the Rage Vial equipment-wise and upgrade-wise. Because for the number 1 priority, the Healing Tome, I would actually recommend you upgrading that first and higher compared to the Eternal Tome. That is going to be important as well, don't get me wrong, but especially the last couple of levels, in my opinion, is giving more power to the Healing Tome compared to the Eternal Tome. But now with the Fireball and the Rage Vial, it's a bit different. The Fireball is going to be usable on level 18. You're going to one-shot most defense in the village with 2 Earthquakes and the Fireball. Only exception are going to be Merged Cannons, Clan Castle, Eagle, and Town Hall. If you have it on level 20, that's the next important level to get, you're going to one-shot the Cannons and the Clan Castle as well with 2 Earthquakes. Those are the most important level to get. So get your Fireball to level 20 and then max your Rage Vial. After that, going to upgrade your Fireball slowly to maxed, but get that level 20 first and then concentrate on the Rage Vial. That is going to be the important synergy you are looking for when upgrading that equipment combination. But let's take a look more at those different strategies. So, if you combine your Warden with high hit point troops, and you're doing not a Warden walk, then you want to go normally always for the Eternal Tome and Healing Book combination. If you're combining them with a lower hit point troops and doing no Warden walk, you're going for Life Gem and Eternal Tome, but the Healing Book works great as well, especially if you're adding an Apprentice Warden in the mix to make sure that the HP of your troops are boosted as well. Otherwise, if you're doing a Warden walk and then you're going to go into a smash attack like Super Bolus, you're going to go for a Terran Tome and the Life Gem, for example. If you're going with Super Witches, you can use the Rage Gem as well. You're kind of more creative and more adjustable on that one. Otherwise, Warden Charge, and that's what I just said. That's my personal favorite currently. The Rage Vial with that, the Rage Gem with that Fireball. It's just going to be so strong. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can just only recommend that combination. To me, currently the number 2 is my favorite combination to use on the Warden. One-man army, it's changed the identity, but it's worth it 100% in my opinion. And that's pretty much it for the video. I hope I was able to cover most of the use cases. In my opinion, when it comes down to what hero should you upgrade first, I think the Warden is the most important. Otherwise, you can go for the Roy Champ and for the King really quickly as well, because if you're getting those classic default equipments upgraded for the King, if you have the Giant Gun and the Rage Vial, you're good to go. You can just, like, for now, skip that hero with upgrades and move on to the next one. Kind of similar to the Roy Champion, except, like, again, you can have Rocket Spear or, like, the Spiky Ball for specific use cases if you want to go creative. But if you're just, like, a normal clasher and you just like to have your normal strategies, then those two number 1 strategies, or, like, number 1 equipment combinations, are just going to be great for you no matter what. Like, there is no reason to upgrade any further. Instead, then I would always concentrate more on the Warden, because he's having so many good equipments that I would more concentrate on the Warden than to have different equipments upgraded. That's at least my personal advice. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys back tomorrow with the next class video. Until then, see ya and bye bye.